All right, welcome back to MGD 111 Photoshop. We're going to continue looking at transformation tools today. The one we're going to look at today is a little more complicated. It's called the Puppet Warp. So if we go to Edit, it's not under the regular Transform, but it's got its own little category up here. It doesn't play well with the others. Now, when you click on that, you get this weird grid that it applies to the picture. How it creates that grid is kind of a little bit confusing. It's just looking for certain points that it can try to make data out of. Don't worry about how it does it, just understand that these grids are sort of important. So you'll notice also that our cursor looks like a push pin. So what do we do with that? Well, what we want to do is try to click on one of these intersections here, and we're making a point. Now, we've made one point so far. This doesn't work until we've made at least a second point. So I'm just going to go somewhere else, and you notice it has a little plus on it, so that means it's going to do another one. So I'm just going to click over here on this point. Okay, now we've got 2 points. Now we can start working with this. So what do we do? Well, if I hold down the Command key and click on one of those existing points, you'll see it starts to move and bend and stretch from this point. It's like I'm grabbing that pin and dragging. Now you'll also notice the other pin that we stuck in there does not move. And you'll notice that the lines around it are kind of starting to stretch and strain. Now we can put as many of these points on here as we want. The key to this is whichever one we are dragging, the other ones, it's like you've driven a nail through the picture and and you're just tugging on one of them. Now, this is kind of a cool thing. You really kind of need to know what you're doing in order to do this one effectively, though. And it's really easy to sort of mess up the picture. You'll notice down here in this corner, it's starting to get a little bit distorted where the lines are kind of overlapping. So I want to be careful not to do that so much. So if I take this point and move it in just a little bit, you'll see I've sort of eliminated that particular thing. Watch what happens if I grab this point here and just really tug it out of proportion. You'll notice it's almost like a three-dimensional thing where I'm stretching this thing so far it's pulling it off the page. We want to be careful not to do that. And by the way, Command-Z will undo your last bit of that particular function. Let's go back to Command-0 here. There we go. So you want to make sure that you're not creating any of these points that are going to make a mess of things. If you hold down the Option key, by the way, you can delete a point. And what's interesting is it sort of deletes the effect where that point was hanging on there, too. So now we're down to basically a hardly warped picture because there's just 2 nails in here. So I'm going to drive another pin here again. Hold down Command and distort it again. You don't want to use too many pins if you can help it. But it is kind of a neat way to be able to distort something from within the picture. We can also, let's see, we can also put a pin just out in the middle of nowhere. So I'm just going to put it in this green so it's not on a line, it's not in an intersection. Now, watch carefully what happens when I pull this other pin. You'll notice that pin isn't anchoring anything. The anchors only hold their ground if they are staked onto one of these gray lines. If you put a pin in the middle of here, and just in the middle of the green field here, it doesn't do anything when you drag another one. It only works when we drag that particular point. So you want to be careful where you put your points. You probably want to mostly put them on these intersections. So it's a way to do a more refined, more detailed warp than just the regular warp feature. So there you go. Pretty cool, huh? Let's go back to our regular state for our additional lessons.